So everyone is losing their damn minds. Check out this tweet from Patricia Arquette. You may have the right to have a gun, but you don't have the right to shoot it at people because you are simply angry.
Well, no shit.
Wow, thanks for clearing up that confusion, Patricia Arquette. You should run for political office based on that platform. Hey, you can have a gun, but you just can't shoot anyone with it. But not only that, she retweeted herself saying that the NRA should put millions behind that platform. Again, did the NRA ever have that position? Like, well, maybe if you're having a bad day and the person that you're shooting is a jerk, then maybe it's justifiable. No! And then you have this tweet from Dave King saying, I mean, I fucking love pizza, but if pizza violently killed 30,000 people a year, I'd be like, okay, maybe none of us should have pizza. Now, put aside the fact that this is a really dumb analogy. This is a guy that's begging to be ruled and dictated. Dave King, this guy wants a king to tell him how to live and what to do. And I think this is a fundamental difference between progressives and conservatives, at least constitutionalist, libertarian-leaning conservatives. Progressives think that the role of government is to solve problems and make society a better place. Constitutionalists think that government's role is to protect individual rights, particularly an individual's right to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Which, by the way, if we ever get socialized medicine in this country, especially on the national level, you will see legislation and regulation prohibiting unhealthy foods. I guarantee it, because then they'll make the argument. I've heard this argument already. They'll make the argument that because so many people are eating unhealthy foods like pizza and drinking soda and eating deep fried cheeseburgers and shit, they're getting all these health diseases and heart diseases. Ben Shapiro pointed this out when he retweeted this dumb tweet. That 600,000 people die of heart disease every year. Yeah, if we ever get socialized medicine, people will say, well, we need to start taxing or outlawing unhealthy foods because these people are becoming obese and having heart problems and shit, and it's becoming a burden on the public health system, so we need to get rid of a few of these foods. Whereas the constitutionalists will be like, fuck you. I want to eat my double bacon cheeseburger and I have every right to. You're not the boss of me. Get the fuck out of here with your stupid ass legislation.
I thought this was America. Huh? Isn't this America? I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
And then you have Jimmy Kimmel. Now, there have been plenty of good rebuttals to Jimmy Kimmel's Monday night monologue already. But a point I want to make is that Jimmy Kimmel's overall argument is that we could have done something to prevent the shooting in Las Vegas. Yet he makes 4 key suggestions, none of which would have prevented the shooting in Las Vegas. Jimmy Kimmel brings up the no-fly list prohibition on guns, which is bullshit to begin with, but put that aside. Stephen Paddock is a licensed pilot and apparently owns 2 planes, so I doubt the no-fly list shit would have worked. Jimmy Kimmel also brings up silencer regulation. And there have been YouTube videos made about this where people demonstrate the difference between silenced and unsilenced. It's barely noticeable. Not to mention, it would have actually been a hindrance on something like a semi-automatic or an automatic rifle because it would have heated up the silencer and it probably would have melted. And it would have actually been a hindrance. So the silencer regulation would have made a difference to begin with. Not to mention, Stephen Paddock never used a silencer, so this is moot altogether. And then he brings up background checks and mental health checks, even though Jimmy Kimmel mentioned in the beginning of his monologue that Stephen Paddock passed all of the necessary mental health and background checks, including ones by the FBI, so that wouldn't have worked. And then he suggests a ban on automatic rifles, which there already is one. And it appears, at least based on the evidence that I see so far, that none of the guns that Stephen Paddock used were automatic and, in fact, were illegally modified, so that ban wouldn't have worked either. None of Kimmel's suggestions would have prevented the Las Vegas shooting, which defeats the entire purpose of his argument to begin with. And then finally, we have to get our terms straight. We have to remind ourselves what the word terrorist means. Terrorism is defined as the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. And the reason why no one is calling Stephen Paddock a terrorist is because we still don't know his motive or if he even had a motive to begin with. But putting that aside, I see a lot of race-baiting losers complaining that white people are never called terrorists, even though back in the 90s, Time magazine put Timothy McVeigh on the cover of their magazine, calling him the face of terror. Timothy McVeigh's Wikipedia page also calls him a terrorist right away. And then we have Dylan Roof. Now, Dylan Roof might not fit the legal definition of a terrorist, but a lot of people in the media called him a terrorist. And I don't know, it sounds like Dylan Roof killed innocent people in order to achieve a political aim. So yeah, I would consider Dylan Roof a terrorist. And then we also have the Ku Klux Klan, who has been labeled a terrorist organization, properly I might add. So yeah, this notion that white people in America are never called or accused of terrorism is just a fucking lie. And while we're on the subject, I notice a lot of people are calling the NRA a terrorist organization. Keith Olbermann said this in one of his dumb videos. And I saw a lot of tweets on this. And I think calling the NRA a terrorist organization is not only absurd, it's slanderous. Now, if anyone can point out examples of where an NRA head or whenever the NRA advocated for violence to achieve political aims, then I will gladly change my opinion on this subject. But from what I can tell, they never advocate for violence, and why the hell would they? They seem to be mastering the game of politics. Even Jimmy Kimmel said this in his monologue. Why would the NRA need to use violent terrorist tactics when they have mastered the game of politics and are really efficient at getting their message out? Anyway, disagree with the NRA all you want, but to call them a terrorist organization, when you have to resort to demonizing your political opponents and people and organizations you disagree with, it just shows how shallow and cowardly you are, because it shows that you are out of logical arguments. Anyway, it appears that the same people that watered down the word racist and ruined it are about to do the same thing with the word terrorist.